So let's move on to the next slide, please. And I'm very happy with my colleagues from CCAP and from Santa Clara County and from CDE to welcome our guest speakers for this quarter's CASI training, who are Michelle Giacomini, who is the Deputy Executive Director from FCMAT, her colleague Jennifer Noga. Jen Noga is a FCMAT intervention specialist. And our own CCAP's Debbie Deal is our treasurer. She's retired from FCMAT and does lots of fiscal consulting around the state for different educational entities. I will just give them a moment to sort of say hello and introduce themselves before we'll sort of talk about a little bit about the logistics for today.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm just really happy to be here today. We're looking forward to sharing lots of information with you.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. Thank you for having me and look forward to working with you.
Well, welcome everyone. I hope you get a lot out of this training today. We have lots of good information, some samples for you, and I look forward to presenting part of this presentation with my FCMAT partners.
All right, thanks very much. So the next slide, most people here, I suspect, are already plugged into CASI, but there may be a few who are new to us. So we always like to just mention by way of background that this is a collaborative effort that's funded through the department under the auspices of the Federal Charter Schools Program. So it's managed collectively by CDE itself and then by Santa Clara County Office of Education, the Charter Schools Department, and Mifla Fairley and Michelle Johnson are with us today. And then those of us at CCAP are the other kind of co-grant sub-recipients with Santa Clara to implement CASI. And the intent is to provide a lot of training opportunities, but also networking opportunities among authorizers around the state, with a special emphasis on small and rural shops. And the reality, as we know, is in lots of places there are not dedicated full-time authorizing staff. And there's a lot of turnover in the field. And this is an attempt to sort of make sure that everybody has the help they need and knows that they are not alone. And you'll see that there's a link to the CASI website right there if you haven't had a chance to check that out yet. So the next slide. The other thing about CASI is we work very hard to have partnerships with regional partners in the county offices of education. And that's an attempt to localize the communications a little bit better and make sure that people, if you've got established lines of communications and you know the folks locally and you have that comfort level, that's how you can interface with CASI. As of today, we have 10 county partners who do that. They are partners not only for the districts within their own counties, but sort of in the abutting counties. So we make sure we have a lot of coverage. If you are with a county office or work with a county office that you think, hey, it would be great to see what's involved in this partnership. It's not a lot of work for the county, but it's really nice to have that communication back and forth, and we're always welcoming more. So this is our current list, and I've bolded El Dorado and Monterey because, as you may have seen, we will be doing a version of this training in person next week in Placerville and in Salinas, so that we can do a little bit of a deeper dive, and those sessions, unlike today's, are sort of limited to authorizers to provide some safe space. Today we're happy to welcome other non-authorizer partners. And with that, we can move to the next slide, and I will turn things over to our presenters, starting with Michelle.
Thank you. So today we're going to cover a lot of things. And so for some of you that went to the annual conference, some are going to be a little bit of a repeat. We've added some new materials, and at the end, we're really excited to add some financial information. And that's the new piece that we've added that is very excited. But right now, what we really want to highlight, which is most I think for oversight, the really important piece is just the reminder of what is in Ed Code that we have to remember for oversight, reminder of what has to be part of the petition, and then the reminders of the importance of a memorandum of understanding, and then best practices. That's always what we want to talk about when we talk about oversight. On the next slide, want to talk about just what is oversight and when it begins. And remember that oversight begins once that petition is approved. It doesn't start 6 months later. It doesn't start a year later. It really begins from the very beginning of when that petition is signed. And sometimes, often with oversight agencies, that's forgotten. And I know from a FCMAT perspective, we've found that often, that when we go in and do reviews, that's often a piece that's overlooked. So remember that oversight begins from the very, very beginning. And that relationship between the oversight agency or the authorizer and the charter school begins from the very beginning. And we're going to talk about relationships for this whole 2 hours. Communication, relationships, that is the most important piece of oversight. And never, ever forget that. Communication, relationships is essential to make oversight a success. That's the really critical piece. And being proactive. We can't reinforce that enough. And you're going to hear us talk about that over and over. The other piece at the bottom of the slide is just making sure people understand the difference, that there can be a difference between what an authorizer and an oversight agency might be. Now, normally they're the same, that the authorizer and the oversight agency is the same, but sometimes it could be different. Now, imagine the case where the superintendent of public instruction or the State Board of Education has approved a charter school, and yet the authorizer or the oversight agency is actually a different entity. A real life example is Ross Valley Charter School. The State Board of Education has approved that charter school, and yet the Marin County Board of Education, they have given the Marin County Office of Education the oversight responsibility for that charter school. So in that case, the authorizer is the State Board of Education, and yet the oversight agency is actually the Marin County Office of Education. So in that case, they are two different entities. So sometimes that can happen. As we go through this, presentation, we're going to assume that the authorizer and the oversight agency are one and the same, but understand that isn't always necessarily the same. Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. We really love this diagram. And so there's two things we really want to reinforce here. First of all, again, is how important communication and working relationships are. And that's why these circles all overlap, that all of these working relationships, all these different departments need to work together because they all interact, they all relate together. So that's the really critical piece. The other important thing is remembering that charter schools, they all encompass all of these areas. And so often when a petition comes forward, the people that bring a petition forward and want to start a charter school often don't realize that it's going to encompass all of these areas. And I'm sure that many potential authorizers have found this, that people have a really good intent that want to start a charter school, but don't necessarily realize that it's more than bringing a good new idea forward of how to educate students, that a charter school also takes a fiscal piece and an operational piece and a governance piece. And people often that want to start a charter school don't have that background or understanding of these other areas. And that's why a good authorizer and good oversight is necessary to help people understand that a good charter school takes all of these areas. And good oversight also needs to encompass all of these areas to ensure that all of these areas are looked over in the charter school. So this diagram is really helpful to remember that both on the charter school side and the authorizer side, all of these areas need to work together, talk, and have relationships. Next slide, please. So when we talk about ed codes, Education Code 47604.32 is critical. And it's the one ed code that really talks about the responsibilities of the authorizer. Now, it's not a big ed code, and you would think that this one ed code that talks about the authorizer's responsibilities would say more. but it doesn't. It outlines 5 responsibilities of what the authorizer must do. It's not very detailed. You would think that it would be more detailed. So you have to understand that within these 5 responsibilities, authorizers must then understand or outline for themselves how they interpret from there what they are going to do. But these are the minimum responsibilities that the authorizer must do. Number 1 is easy to understand, that the authorizer must identify one staff member as the contact person for the charter school. Now that's at a minimum, right? That's the contact person. That doesn't mean that there's only going to be one person that works with the charter school. Understand that working with the charter school is going to take more than one person, because working with the charter school will be a fiscal person, an operations person. Think of the diagram on the previous page, a governance person. You're going to have people at the working with the charter school that's going to have a expertise in all of those different areas. Those are the people that are going to work with the charter school if you're going to provide good oversight. But one person has to be listed as the contact person, and that's critical. The second has to do with, you're going to do one site visit annually at a minimum. Now, in my perfect world, and that's a term I use a lot, in my perfect world, you would do more than one site visit annually. Now, a good site visit takes a lot of time and a lot of preparation. So those of you who have done site visits right now are thinking, oh my God, more than one annually. Yes, in a perfect world, because one site visit will give you a good idea of what's happening at the charter school, but also doing more than one would give you an even better idea. And to have a good relationship with your charter school, it's going to take more than one site visit annually. So think about how you might be able to do that. The third requirement is that the charter school must comply with all reports that are required of the charter school. And so that third requirement isn't very specific as far as what those reports actually are, because that requirement is going to change through time as it does for any district, right? Those mandatory reports might change or be added to as time goes on. So the ed code isn't very specific, so that can change and expand as it does for districts as well as time goes on. The fourth requirement for authorizers is that authorizers must monitor the fiscal condition of the charter schools. And so that then the authorizer must decide what will be necessary to do that. That will usually be decided and expanded on within the MOU that is in place between the authorizer and the charter school. How will that happen? How will the authorizer monitor the fiscal condition? What reports will be necessary to do that will usually be outlined within the MOU. And the fifth requirement is that there are certain things that must be notified to the California Department of Ed, such as if the charter is renewed, revoked, denied. All of that must be notified to the California Department of Ed so that the CDE knows what's going on with that specific charter at any time, so that CDE knows at any time what charters are new, are revoked, are no longer. So that's a notification requirement. Next
So
slide.
Michelle, if
Yes.
I can pop in on that just for a second. Of all the 5 legal requirements listed here in this particular ed code, monitoring the fiscal condition of the charter school is the one that, needs the most assistance because, as you've pointed out, some of these are pretty clear. But monitoring the fiscal condition of a charter school isn't clear at all. It's pretty much all over the map. So we're going to help you today with some of those tools and resources to do this important work. Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely. So as far as oversight best practices, we're going to start getting into some of those now. So oversight best practices, we use those terms when we talk about fiscal. We use the terms internal controls a lot. And so when we start talking about internal controls, we always want to have good internal control. So whether we're talking about charter schools or school districts or county office of educations, in addition to internal controls, we also want to make sure that charter schools have policies and procedures. And we want to make sure that in addition to all of that, that your charter schools also have manuals. And so as you're working with your charter schools, you want to make sure that you're identifying what manuals that the charter schools should have in place. And so you're going to want to think about what manuals that you want them to have in place. And you're going to want to identify what manuals they should have in place and be working with them and identifying that in the memorandum of understanding. Remember, the charter school, as that charter school is being developed, they're not necessarily going to know what they should have in place. That's where this relationship building comes in place. You're going to want to work with them. If this is probably a brand new charter school, people that have never had a school before, they're not going to know either. You're going to want to help them, provide samples, talk to them about what these best practices are. So they're going to want samples of policies and procedures and those manuals. This is all about working as a partner. You're going to want to be a team. And then the more you work with them, meet with them, be their partner, help them be successful. It's just really, really critical. I always think of the way that charters are developed. And it's, from the beginning, if you don't start as a team, it's not going to end as a team. And it's all about that relationship from the very, very beginning. And so if you can be helpful from the beginning, I really believe it will continue to be helpful versus a gotcha attitude. And through the years, I've seen it done both ways. And the working from the beginning as a team is the way to just make it successful as you go through the years. But the other thing from a oversight perspective, if you don't document from the beginning, it will get you as an oversight agency in trouble, because if things do go wrong, if it's not in writing, as we have on the slide, it didn't happen. Because if things do go wrong and you don't have it down in writing, it doesn't matter that you tried and you tried to have the conversations and you made the right suggestions, you tried to work as a team, because all that good work and all the things that you tried will all be forgotten. So you do need to write down what you tried to do and what conversations you had and what suggestions and when you met. And you've got to have all of these things documented of what you did and what worked and what didn't work. You've got to have that documented because it's really, really critical that you did. You've got to have your meetings documented. You've got to have evaluations done. You've got to have progress reports. You've got to do all of that done because it shows what your best practices did, what worked, what didn't. But it's critical to your success. It's critical to when it's time for renewal. All of that is critical to show that you tried and that it's part of what you have to do as far as your oversight. Now, remember that you're required to do one visit per year, one site visit per year. All of that is a very documented event as well. And so that isn't just a financial site visit, that spans all of the different areas. And so that's a critical area as well, but that's educational, attendance, human resources. It's all of the areas when you do that site visit. And all of these are we have samples of all of that. CCAP has samples of all of those areas for you if you were to go to their website of how to do all of this. You're not alone on any of this. When it's time to do any of these site visits, you have samples of all of that. That's the best thing about all of this, that you're not left hanging on wondering how to do any of this. You have samples of how to do this best.
Michelle, it's also important, this documentation provides the record for sure, but also we want to introduce at this time, that documenting your time in doing these activities is also important, because you have your oversight fees and you need to document your actual efforts and costs related to your oversight duties. And documenting is also part of that oversight duty. So
Right.
making sure that you log in your time and keeping these records and documentations is critical for that portion of the work as well.
Right.
Manuals become important because people come in and out of these roles all of the time. And so having a documented manual that somebody new in your organization can kind of pick up where you've left off is also a very important thing. Thank you, Michelle.
Right. And we'll talk about the fees in a couple slides. So yeah, thank you, Debbie. So just as a reiteration of what we've been saying is, as far as the authorizer's role is building that partnership. And so we can't say that enough. Good communication, partnership, that's critical. The second thing that we haven't talked about that we think is really, really important as an authorizer is making sure that you're providing good information to your charter school that on major budgetary changes, so that then they can provide better budgets and make sure that their budget information is accurate. So just as county office provide budget changes, as the governor has like a May revise, a January budget change, as the state budget changes, many county offices send all those budget changes to their school districts. It's a really good idea that authorizers send all of that budget information and changes to their charter schools. So then charter schools have all of those new budget assumptions and they can make changes to their budgets. Excuse me, because the better budget information that charter schools have, the better that their budgets will be and more updated their budgets will be throughout the year. So be a good partner to your charter schools, and the better their budgets will be a very good idea. And so be a good partner to your charters that way. And so just, again, be a good partner, be a good partner, share information. If you have trainings as the authorizer is having trainings, if you're a school district or a county office and you're having trainings, invite your charter school to those trainings, be a good partner. I always think that's a really good way to show that they're part of your team. You're all one. Those are just good ways to show that you're part of the same team. Next slide, please. So as Debbie was saying earlier, remember when we were talking about documentation, it's very important to remember as far as documentation, when it comes to, so step back for a second. Remember that we are able to charge, as an oversight agency, we are able to charge an oversight fee to our charter schools, either 1% or 3%. And that's based on whether we provide substantially rent-free facilities to our charter schools. It's 1% unless it's 3% if we do provide substantially rent-free facilities. It's 1% if we do not. But it's based on actual costs. So it's 1% or 3%, up to 1% or 3%, but it's actual costs up to those amounts. Okay. The problem is you have to substantiate your costs. So you have to document your costs because it's based on actual costs. So what we find is that most authorizers are charging 1% or 3%, but they're not actually substantiating their actual costs by documenting their actual costs. And that's a really important point, is the actual costs part, is the documentation. So if authorizers were doing a better job of documenting all the work that they were doing, the conversations, the times, the meetings, all the work, then the actual cost piece of supervision could be actually substantiated of the 1% and the 3%. And that's a really critical piece of these oversight fees, right? I'd be interesting in the chat box if we were to ask the question. I don't want to put people on the spot though, because that would kind of be scary, of how many oversight agencies were actually tracking the actual costs of their oversight fees. Because most, I think, oversight agencies don't actually have a really good mechanism in place of substantiating their actual costs of oversight fees. So that's just something to think about as far as their oversight fees. Next slide,
Yeah.
please. Yes,
A question came in. I know we wanted to allow questions to come in.
yes. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, and I didn't say that earlier. People do have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. Or you could raise your hands, although that's harder to see sometimes. But yes, absolutely ask your questions. Sorry, I didn't say that earlier. Yes.
That's okay. So the question was, can authorizers include attorney fees in the cost?
Attorney,
So the answer to that is if you're working with, all costs are considered. If you're working with your attorneys and they're drafting documents for you and doing direct charter school work for you, yes, those are actual costs to the district. And you can charge those costs. But again, you must document those costs.
okay, are there any other questions? Because I should have said that earlier and I apologize.
None of
Okay.
this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next slide.
All right, go ahead.
Because the reality, and that this kind of goes on with that conversation, is that most, we do find that most entities, most authorizers do charge the maximum, the 1% or 3%, and they are not documenting their actual costs of oversight. And the part that scares me the most is that so often, we use the statement of saying that we aren't getting the authorizers aren't being reimbursed enough for the time spent on oversight. We say that all the time, right? Authorizers aren't being reimbursed enough for oversight. We all say that. And yet most oversight agencies, most authorizers aren't actually tracking their time. So if they aren't tracking their time, how can we say that they are not being reimbursed enough? So that's a really frightening part if we're not actually tracking it. So we really need authorizers to start following the law, the ed code, tracking their time so that we can actually substantiate that statement. So that's a really important part of this. Okay, next slide.
I want to add in again,
Uh-huh.
tracking the time, right? So we're tracking the employee's time. We know they're hourly. We can figure it out, right? Plus all the statutory benefits. There's like the little minutes, those add up, right? Our fringe benefits, all of that. But the other thing about documenting your time are the site visits. You have your mileage. You're paying somebody mileage to drive out there. You have those expense reports. Those are easy to grab and track and pull together. So it's time, it's mileage, it's whatever you're reimbursing your staff for. So not trying to get up to, maximize everything, but just think about all the costs that are included with that oversight. Sorry.
No, it's good.
My 2 cents.
It's an important topic. It really is. So just so everybody has the ed code on for site visits, this is the ed code for your site visits. Again, really important. Site visits are critical just to make sure that you do them on at least on an annual basis, at least once. And they're critical to not only to do them, but there's an important way to understand the charter school, the culture and the climate of the charter school, and to really see what's happening. I know there's no better way to understand, what's happening there, and then to really see the condition of the facilities, to walk around the site, see what's happening in the classroom. There's no better way to just get a feel of the charter school. Next slide, please. So just to kind of understand the difference between the petition and the MOU, the MOU, remember, is not required, but the MOU is critical. It is critical. I can't imagine a charter school having a charter school without an MOU. But the petition is the original contract, and then the MOU is kind of the add-on contract that goes along with the petition. It has all the extra stuff. It's the extra, the petition is, very outlined as far as what has to be in the petition, and has, all the requirements, the elements, all the stuff that has to be in there. But the MOU has all the additional timelines and documents and other things that you want to make sure that the additional details that you want to make sure the charter and the authorizer understand will also be required. And I think it's really to make sure there are no disagreements or misunderstandings between the two parties of what will be required. And it goes both ways, right? These are the additional reports. These are the additional timelines. These are additional things that will be required throughout the year.
Kind of the expectations of what you as the authorizer are going to need from the charter school. If it's outlined in the MOU, right? The budget documents may not be sufficient. So you may need financial reports, you may need income statements, or you're requiring certain things to go to the board monthly. It's outlined in the MOU, and it's not a surprise between the charter and you. Again, it's building that relationship and the communication between you and the charter. Everybody wants a successful like relationship. And so there's no surprises.
Right. Yeah. I think it benefits both parties tremendously. The MOU to me is just a critical document. Yes.
Agree.
Okay.
If I were going to add in on that just a little bit, a lot of times this is really focused towards the fiscal needs. Of course, that's what I look at. But the documents that I want to see on a regular basis, whether they're monthly or quarterly or whatever, cash flow, for example, I would like to see monthly. Certain things I'd like to see quarterly, not just at first interim or second interim as required by law, but maybe a little sooner than that in some of the other documents that support some of the financial metrics that we'll be talking about a little bit later in this presentation would be included in the MOU. So if there are particular documents that you want to see or particular timelines that you want to have them adhere to, this is the place where that would be documented in the MOU, not in the petition, but generally in the MOU is a lot more detailed. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So as far as monitoring the fiscal condition, these are all really important pieces that as an authorizer that the authorizer should be looking at monitoring on a regular basis. Enrollment, ADA, UPP, cash on hand, making sure that the board approved deadlines are being met and that the timely reporting is occurring. These are all critical things. These are all things that I would put in the MOU. These are all things, I know that FCMAT, for instance, I mentioned Ross Valley Charter School earlier. We're doing we're working with the Marin County Office of Ed on oversight and doing the oversight on behalf of Marin County Office of Ed. And we have a calendar, and these are the things that we have in the calendar that we are looking at on a monthly basis. These are the things that are in the MOU that we're looking at on a monthly basis. And this is a calendar of things that we're looking at. These are the types of things that would be in an MOU in a perfect world. This is the kind of detail that you would see in the MOU. These are the types of things you can build in that you wouldn't see in a petition. These are the helpful things. Okay, next slide.
I'm going to add in just a small piece.
Sure.
Right? The enrollment, the average daily attendance, and the UPP, right? Those are all items that are on the LCFF calculator. So again, very useful. You're going to need those when you're monitoring their financials. But the UPP, one of the key things there is to make sure that they have a process in place for counting those students, right? You just want to make sure that they're not not doing anything? You know, are they capturing all of their students? Are they sitting at 40% when they're really serving a population that's in the 70s or 80%? And so you want to ensure that there's a process and that they're following their process. Sorry.
No, sorry.
I keep saying sorry every time I jump in.
Nope, there's no sorry. It's good. Okay, as far as reporting, these are all the reports that at a minimum that you want to make sure that the charter school is sending in. And these are the same as school districts, right? These are the things that you're used to seeing if you're in a school district, or a county office. These are the same reports. For your budgets and your interims, you know, when they submit the reports, when the charter school submits the reports, you'd want to be making sure that not only have the reports been submitted per the state deadlines, are the assumptions reasonable, but both for the revenues and the expenditures based on the size of the charter school, you know, and just like if you're in a school district, are the donations accounts reasonable and supported by donor letters? Is there deficit spending? What about the reserve levels? You know, these are the types of things that you'd be looking at to make sure that the reports make sense. Are they reasonable? So it's not just are they submitted on time, but do the reports make sense? And then for the LCAP, which is also by July 1st, just like the adopted budget, is the LCAP represented in the adopted budget? You know, and then is the LCAP also posted on the budget? Excuse me, is the LCAP posted on the website? And is it meeting all of the requirements that it needs to? Is it complete? So those are both the July 1st, right? Interim reports, along with, you know, is it reasonable and all the assumptions and all of that. Remember, there are 2 interim reports that are required by December 15th and March 15th. And then you have the unaudited actuals on or before September 15th. And then we have the annual independent audit by December 15th. And you want to make sure that that opinion is unqualified and that there are minimal findings and that there aren't repeat findings. That's important, that the findings aren't repeated year after year, that those findings are taken care of and taken seriously. So these are critical, these reports on an annual basis, as far as what you're going to see as an authorizer. Does anyone
Michelle, we have a chat question.
I was just going to point that out. We did.
Okay. Go ahead and read it.
Yeah. So the question is, can you please give an example of a process that could be used to monitor the UPP?
I can help with that if you like.
Sure.
So of course, everybody knows that the October 5th timeline for collecting data for this year has just happened. And that's where we get the bulk of our information for the unduplicated pupil percentage, or the UPP. And so leading up to that date, which is our enrollments and kids that qualify under any one of those very specific categories of free and reduced, foster youth, English learners, and homeless students. The process is really around checking in at various points in time, beginning with the first day of school, and then checking in daily for the first 10 days, and then weekly after that, to see how many of those forms we've collected, the alternative forms. So that's a process that I've used anyway, and it works well. So like, for example, a couple of weeks ago, numbers that I was checking, they were at 47%, when last year they were at 85%. And so putting more efforts out into the field to collect those forms and get those numbers up was important. And so that was the process in place, was monitoring that, you know, how many counts do we have and where are we at and how many more days, and then kicking in additional staff in order to make sure that we get folks out in the field helping parents, helping to get those forms in and picking up those counts and making sure that our principals were involved, and that all staff was kind of on board to help us get those forms in. And so now just checking in, it's at over 70% at this point. We still have until the end of October to collect those forms and get those counts up. So I'm still pushing, but that's a process. And it can be a process that you can share with your charter school. And it's a very important calculation because that's how we get our supplemental and concentration grant funding. And so it's really, really important that we have a process in place and that they're actually monitoring those counts and getting those counts up as high as possible for that funding. So that's an example of one process that people could use.
And just a follow on that, so that's kind of a process that the charter school would be taking, right? So as you, as the authorizer, you're going to ask the questions, what process are you using? What are you doing? Do you have maybe the applications in the parent packets or the annual packets that go out to the parents? Are you meeting with the parents to help them fill out the form? You know, what are they doing? Are they using the direct certification options? So you're just going to kind of ask them, what are they doing? And then look for backup to support that they are actually doing that, right? Or is their UPP increasing? And so, yeah, that's all the items they should be doing. And so as far as monitoring, again, it's just asking the questions, working with them. Are they struggling and are they increasing based on their population? And now we have a hand raised. So I don't know how that works on the hand raise. Sorry. Do I unmute her or?
I think they can unmute themselves.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Thank you for
That's you,
recognizing
Shalu.
me. Yes, I have a quick question regarding, I know you did mention regarding the independent financial audit and it's due December 15. And how do we, or I would like to understand, or if you can provide some more insight on someone who is requesting an extension for over 100+ days, even though the CDE is silent on how many days the audit extension could be granted. So even though as an authorizer, we are taking the conservative approach by, granting with the fewer days than what they are asking for. But my question is specifically if they are not able to have their audit submission by the day we are requesting them to, and they're asking for a second extension. And, just wanted to see any insight that you would like to share. How will that go? Because we do want to make sure any audit findings are cleared before the year-end close. And we do know there is a change or new leadership with that school. So, there are a lot of things going on, and we just want to make sure we are following the protocol. Anything that you would like to share would be helpful.
So I kind of feel like you led us into our next slide. Did you peek ahead?
No, I did not.
There's no peeking ahead on the slide. Sorry. So I kind of feel like you kind of led us in to the next slides, which is the red flags, right? And so to answer your question, which I'll go back to the beginning, but if your charter school is unable to communicate or to get the financial data to their auditors, that's a red flag, right? I mean, if the auditors took on too many clients, you really want to know what the reason is for the extension. Is it that the auditors are the ones delaying it, or is it that the charter school can't get the financial data that they're asking for? So you need to know, you're going to need to talk to the auditors. You're going to need to talk to the charter school. What's the reasoning behind the extension? It comes down to kind of number 3 up here, right? Is their leadership unable to communicate their financial position, or are they unable to even get the financial information that the auditors are asking for? That's a huge red flag.
And definitely ask the auditor, because another charter school we were helping was blaming it on the auditor.
Oh yeah, talk to both.
And it was not the auditor, it was the charter school. I mean, it was like this pointing finger thing, and it ended up it wasn't the auditor. It was definitely the charter school. So
We are definitely asking from the school to have a letter from their auditor stating the reason for delay, so we'll have a better reason and, understanding. And we're definitely meeting with the school leaders to have a better understanding to see, how the things are going and where the delay is. But I was just kind of wondering if they do ask for a second request, is it appropriate at that time to grant another, or is there another step that we need to, have in place, or any ed code that would restrict?
there's no ed code. There is not an ed code. So no, there is no ed code.
There will be a notice at some point from the state treasurer's office, regarding SB 740 funding and some concerns about the audit not being filed timely. I mean, I've seen that before one other time. And because the audit was actually over a year late, then the district in question had to respond as to whether they believed that they were fiscally responsible going forward. And the district said no, because they didn't have their audit. And therefore they lost their 740 money as a result of not having the audit done in time, even once there was an extension to the audit period, which was somewhat reasonable. But it sounds like, after a certain point, it's not reasonable. And they either need to figure out what the problem is. If it's their auditor, they need to switch auditors, or if it's an internal issue where they can't get their documents together for audit, then, at that point, it's definitely a red flag. And it may impact, their 740 funding and other funding opportunities. And certain other grants that they may be wanting to apply for will also be in jeopardy. So you need to have a real serious conversation with them about what could be in play if they don't get their audit to you in a more timely basis. It's one thing to have a minor exception and maybe 90 days, but then after that it becomes a bit unreasonable.
Thank you.
And if there was turnover in staff and they're trying to figure out what the prior staff did, again, they might be struggling. If you've been the consistent, kind of contact, then maybe you can help them gather information or whatever, again, working together as a team. But yeah, it's definitely a red flag. Oh, we have another hand up.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I just want to share from our perspective in terms of the request for an audit extension. Because it's written in law and statute, we cannot really approve the request, but we do ask the charter from all the way up to the top to submit a letter requesting extension along with the reason for the nature of the delay. So we want that to get documented, and then we also as Jennifer mentioned, there's usually red flag, right? When audits are not completed timely. So there's other issues that may be related to the delay of the audit, such as monthly financial reports. So we would follow that up with the letter. Like, for example, during our interim budget review, we also cite non-compliance with statutory reporting. We'll actually cite the missed deadlines. So that will put them on notice for next year. So we don't do this to all charter, but it's one-time exception is different. But if there's usually it's a larger issue that's internal control related, that like monthly financial, bank aren't reconciled timely. So we don't approve the actual request. We acknowledge receipt and we expect the report to be received by the day they request it. So that's how we handle it.
Thank you. So kind of to start with the red flags and signs of fiscal distress. So obviously, I'm not going to read them all to you, but charter schools are voluntary, right? Organizations. They have no boundaries like school districts do. So when they're putting their budgets together, they know their enrollment. They know what they're marketing. They know what they're doing, right? They know what their petition allows as far as a cap. They know what their facilities can kind of hold. So they can kind of put any number in there, right, for their enrollment when they're putting their budget together. But you as the authorizer and oversight, you want to check those numbers, right? What's the trend? So if they say they're going to grow 100 students each year, and they've been saying that for 3 years, but they're only hitting, 25% of that or 50% of that, then when the next budget or the third budget year, once you kind of have 3 years, that's kind of that their budget is always overestimating enrollment. Same with the ADA, right? So at budget time, you may not know with their ADA. We've all been through COVID, right? So we're sitting in the 92s. But if they're estimating 98%, again, go look at the prior years, go look at what their trends are doing. Again, this year might be a little hard because of COVID. Those ADA percentages weren't up. In the interims, when you get to first interim, you don't have P1 data. By P2 or by second interim, you'll have P2. So you'll know if what their enrollment is and what their percentage is. And so you can use that even when they're building the next year's budget. So these are all just things to monitor and watch and track, right? You have Excel, you can create spreadsheets that are putting all of this information together. So you just want to make sure that they are monitoring and not overestimating their enrollment. Obviously spending more money than they receive, right? So as a new charter, that might be what's happening. New charters, they're starting up, they have some one-time startup cost. So when you look at their current year, they might be deficit spending. When you look at their multi-year, is that deficit spending decreasing or is it increasing? Are they talking about it? Is there a plan to address, or is it stabilizing, right? That deficit spending cannot continue for years. Obviously it will not be successful. So leadership, we kind of talked about that with the audit, right? So leadership's unable to communicate to their board their fiscal position, or unable to communicate it to the executive directors or principals. If that CBO or financial person is struggling, if they don't have a back office provider, then again, red flag. They have to be able to communicate it. They have to be able to pull the documents for the auditors. They have to be able to have a good understanding of what needs to be out there, what's important, your cash flow, right? Cash flow versus fund balance. Do they know the difference? Okay, everybody might kind of chuckle at that, but it really is, it is something that not everybody understands. And then payables going unpaid and receivables uncollected, right? So they close the books. You have a list of your payables that you need to pay, your receivables. Are they clearing their receivables by first interim? Does their cash flow account for all of those payables? We have questions coming in. So there is a whole thing. So there's a question of, isn't the charter LCFF UPP funding percentage capped at the district's percentage? And somebody answered, yes, Debbie answered that there is a UPP cap based on their, give me the word, Debbie, I'm not going to say it correctly, district of residence?
District of residence.
Thank you.
Or district that they selected if they cover multiples, yes.
Right, okay. So yeah, so there is caps on those. But again, just monitor and make sure that the trends are being tracked and that you're looking at all of those things. Again, dipping into your reserves for a startup charter, that's might be typical, right? But are they having the conversation, and are they making a plan so that that's stabilizing and that the 2 out years show that that deficit is decreasing? Are the board meetings only talking about cash? Like, oh, we need to borrow money. We don't have enough money to pay all of our vendors, or I don't know if we're going to get, this grant that we applied for. If the focal point of the conversations at the board meetings is all just concentrating on cash, that's an issue as well. And then
Jen?
Oh, go
I
ahead.
love this. I love this question. How much should school leadership depend on back office for knowledge of fiscal health?
Hmm.
Can I take it? Or do you want?
Yeah, my percentage might be different than yours.
Well, the school should not depend 100% on the back office for knowledge of fiscal health. I mean, they can't depend 100% on the back office for knowledge of fiscal health. I mean, there has to be someone at the charter school that also understands to some point about fiscal health. You can't just depend on the back office. That's a really scary position for a charter school to be. That's our position. Because that will get the charter school in trouble if they're totally depending on the back office. That's our position. I
Right.
don't know if there's a different opinion.
No, the charter staff needs to be able to
Yes.
understand everything that is being talked about or brought to the board, their income statement, the balance sheets, the cash flow. If they have questions, they should be meeting with their back office providers monthly, right? So that they can understand it. Do not rely solely on the back office provider. It's like handing over your checkbook, right? Do you want somebody else to manage your money? I mean, you're in charge of the charter, not you, right? The authorizer, you're overseeing it. But that executive director, that board, that CBO, this is their like school. And so you should always know what's happening in your school, whether it's programmatically, fiscal, facilities. You're going to wear your rotating hat and have to understand all of it.
Ultimately, the charter board is responsible for their own financials and financial position. And so therefore, the staff and board of a charter school should be knowledgeable enough about their own financial position and financial statements and not rely. I agree completely with what Jen and Michelle are saying, that you can't rely on the back office service provider. It's like having an accounting service providing a service for you, but you are ultimately responsible for your own financials.
So the question that just came up, if we're seeing that a charter is completely dependent on the back office provider, what should we do? And so I'm assuming this is an authorizer asking the question, then that definitely has to be, because I'm assuming that you're an authorizer that's documenting everything and sending letters, and letters when you see concerns, in my perfect world, you're sending, when you have concerns, you're sending documentation and letters and some type of communication to the charter school. This would be a documented issue and a letter something you would put in a letter to the charter school. This is something you would start documenting. That this would definitely be a red flag, that if you see that they're completely dependent, there's nobody at the charter school that seems to have any knowledge. If it's just the back office provider that's doing all of the presentations and nobody at the charter school seems to have any knowledge, that is a problem.
I would recommend that they have regular meetings, especially around the adoption period, the first and second interim, estimated actuals, so on and so forth. So with management of the charter school, I would make that actual recommendation to them in this case. If I saw that they were relying completely on the back office service provider, that would be my recommendation, is that management and key financial personnel at the charter school actually have these interfaces and meetings with these back office service providers at these interval periods of time. Because I mean, they could be hosting several charter schools, and their software is, sometimes pretty cookie cutter, if you will, and they may not have the most current and reliable details on attendance, on enrollment, on UPP in their financial projections. And so therefore, having these stand-in meetings would be a good recommendation coming from the authorizer to the charter school.
And so as an authorizer, just to follow up on that, as an authorizer, right, what should you do? ask the question, ask if the charter schools are meeting with their back office providers. If they are meeting with the back office providers and aren't getting their questions asked, hopefully, again, the team effort, the communication, the collaboration, they tell you that, and then you can work with them and maybe give them some key questions to ask. Let's just start with the enrollment, the UPP, the projections, the staffing, right? Kind of give them some guiding questions to ask to assist them with getting information that they feel they're not getting or they're not understanding. Did we answer all of them? Okay, so I'm going to go back to number 7. The lack of regular board meeting and board minutes without a financial review. Again, in the MOUs, as we mentioned, a good charter as a nonprofit, you're interested in your bottom line. Your bottom line is kind of like the most important thing to you, right? Again, our purpose, educating students, so maybe second most, right? Because we want to give those students the good education. But without seeing your income statement, your balance sheet, and your cash flow, as a board, you really can't make good recommendations. You're kind of approving things blindly. So in the MOU, I would definitely suggest that those 3 statements are kind of going to the board at least monthly. You also want to ensure that the board is following the Brown Act and that it's a good run, obviously, charter, right? That their minutes are being done timely and documented. Number 8, internal controls. Remember, internal controls are there to protect the organization as a whole, right? But it's also there to protect the employees so that finger pointing can't come back to them that they're not doing something right. You want to make sure that their policies and procedures are being updated, that they have management tools in place, kind of the financial software in place so that the employees can do their jobs. And then the reporting, again, the reporting being timely. The unaudited actuals is a big one, making sure those are done on time.
Okay, so a new question, and I love this question. Question about checking cash flow updates. How often should the district be reviewing the cash flow document, monthly or quarterly, or with July budget for second interim reports? You should be checking cash flow updates as often as you possibly can or feel you should be. I would be checking them monthly. That would be in the MOU. That's in my perfect world. That's what I would have. I don't know if my co-presenters have a different opinion, but that's what I would have.
My thought is, kind of dependent on the current existing conditions. We all know that there's been times in our past where cash flow has been an issue with, the state where there's been deferrals. During times of deferrals and short cash flows, then I would certainly say at least monthly. And even split months might even be appropriate when we see that, cash deferrals are crossing fiscal years and so on and so forth, depending on how many there are. Right now, with a lot of one-time money in play and carryover of one-time money and new grant funding and no deferrals, I would say that, if they're in a pretty fair cash position generally, and they've been a charter of good standing for some time, quarterly might be sufficient. It just really depends on the charter individually, I think, also because they may have loans outstanding that they have to repay. So each individual charter school organization would stand on its own, in my opinion. I would look at that, whether they were a brand new charter, if they were a startup, if they were a charter that had been in existence for a while, if they had a lot of debt to be repaid. All of those factors would come to mind and would then inform how often I felt that I would need to see their cash flow projections, whether monthly, quarterly, or with their financials.
Right. And the important thing there is the earlier you see something coming up, right, the easier it is to address it. I mean, if you find out, you know, at the end of the quarter that you're struggling with cash or you're going to run out of cash, you're going to go out for a loan, you know, where are you going to go? It's last minute. And so last minute is never a good plan. So the earlier you can identify issues, the better it is. So I would stick with monthly. And again, I say monthly, right? Just because even if it's a good charter, they might have some big project that's coming along. And so if they have a huge facilities or HVAC or something, you just want to know how it's going to impact the cash flow. And then we spend all of those federal one-time dollars, the COVID dollars, the ESSER dollars. Are you reporting those dollars and receiving it, right? That's another thing that you can look at to make sure that they're filling out their cash flow, federal cash management. Now I've kind of given away my next slide, but anyway, so those are just important things to think about. Move. Okay, so indicators of risk. FCMAT has put together indicators of risk, both for school districts, charter schools, as well as community colleges. I think it's even over 25 years of experience. There are 15 items, and under each of the 15 items, there's multiple bullets. So I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but lack of attention to each of these indicators will lead to fiscal insolvency and ultimately the discontinuance of the charter school. So these are very important indicators that need to be looked upon. I've kind of touched on some of it already, right, with the budget development that's using unreasonable or unclear budget assumptions. Are they just using a prior year rollover? The budget monitoring, when you're looking at the interims, are you seeing that their actual to dates really align with what their projected budget is, right? Do they still have 60% or 40% of their budget remaining in kind of I'm going to say the salaries and benefits? I almost talked in my code language, right? The objects 1, 2, and 3s. No, in the salaries and benefits. So mismanagement of salary and benefits, if they have a huge retiree incentive and are they tracking that liability and are they making a plan for that liability? Same with the contributions. So yes, we all have contributions to special ed, but is the charter making contributions to other programs? And therefore they need to talk about it and make a plan to reduce those contributions. Deficit spending, we've touched on. Mismanagement of employee benefits, again, that's kind of vacation carryover. It's just one of the big areas that we see, right? So they have a board policy that that employees can't carry vacation balances over, but yet when it comes to look at their actual data, right, you see employees that have 400 hours when their max may be 80. So those are things to look at. Inattention to enrollment and attendance reporting. So again, we've touched on that with the over projecting your enrollment at budget time. And then when it comes to first and second interim, that needs to be, downgraded to what really happened. So a fund balance and reserves for economic, again, kind of goes along with the deficit spending. So while you may have enough fund balance to, for a couple years of deficit planning, make sure that there's a plan so that that's stable, that it stabilizes or it stops. Debt is a big one, right? What's their debt to income ratio? And along with debt goes the continuing disclosure requirement. So you can go on Emma to make sure that they're making sure that all of their reports are being sent. You can go right on Emma's website. The lack of multi-year planning. Again, that's reasonable, assumptions. Not over projecting the enrollment, using consistent and their trends as far as ADA and the UPP, using the CPI for utilities, not just kind of plugging numbers in. which you'll see in some of the samples that we're going to talk about later. Lack of position control, you can really look at that with their unaudited actuals, compare their estimated and their unaudited actuals, and if there's a large swing, or they have a lot of money fall to the bottom, then those are things they need to tighten up. 15 is really about related issues of concerns. The funding of determination for non-classroom based charters. If you're growing, you want to make sure that those reports are being submitted timely, because that's going to impact your cash flow. And then uncontrolled expenditures like the special ed or other programs that might be dipping into general fund dollars, the unrestricted. And then the statement of economic interest. You really want to make sure that the required employees, as outlined in the charter's board policy, are submitting their Form 700s and pointing out all of the related parties that they may have. That's very important. That's a big area that can get some charters in trouble as far as the fraud is concerned. Sorry, I went through those fast. So
I think we have one question. Would you recommend including long-term liabilities like deferred rent in calculating minimum reserve percentage? Long-term liabilities like deferred rent liability in long-term liabilities, deferred rent liability.
So
I think the answer is no. Would you recommend including long-term liabilities like deferred rent in calculating minimum reserves percentage?
So are they not paying rent?
It's deferred rent.
Deferred rent.
I don't think you would include that in the minimum reserve percentage because
No.
it's deferred. So
Right.
it'd be down in the, no,
Because it would be right.
No,
No.
only the actual expenditures would
That's
be
a no.
included in the calculation.
Yeah.
We don't calculate any of the liabilities, but that would certainly show up in some of the other metrics that we have.
Yeah, so that's a no.
Um,
And then somebody else answered it as the same. It said
I
it
was
would
gonna
be
say
on
it
the
should be on the
balance sheet.
balance sheet.
Yeah, it's in the fund balance, so it's in the balance sheet. Okay. Okay, so the next two slides, I'm just going to go through quick because we're running out of time to get to the good stuff. The next two slides, Jen, you can just go through them quickly, are all about Senate Bill 75 that basically says that you can ask for any financial information so that you are able to perform your oversight duties. So you can ask for any financial information so you can assess the financial position of your charter schools. So that's why you're able to ask for accounts receivable, aging reports, bank reconciliations, balance sheets, income statements. And although Senate Bill 75 gives you that latitude to ask for all of that information, you really should still list all of that in the memorandum of understanding to make it clear what you're going to be asking for. I mean, Senate Bill 75 makes it possible for you to ask for that, so there shouldn't be a problem, but just to clear it up and make it simpler so that there isn't a disagreement, put it in your MOU. Just make it clear that you're going to be asking for it. And so that's basically what slides 21 and 22 are all about, just to help you understand Senate Bill 75 and what you can and should be asking for. So you can go ahead to slide 23 now. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to take over at this point and show you some exciting tools that CCAP has put together. And there's some links here where you can actually go in and get some of the financial framework resources, some of the performance indicators and templates to use in your good work as you do your oversight. I want to point out that these tools are in conjunction with the great tools that FCMET has on their website that you can download for free, together with looking at some of the items that they've already talked today, the 15 indicators, but also the fiscal risk and health analysis tool, which you can download and actually utilize yourself. So these tools are in addition to that. So next slide, please. So we've put together a financial framework, and basically it kind of divides into different sections, but we have indicators, which are the categories, of course, of the financial performance. We have measurements that we have in our fiscal tools that are a means to evaluate. And then the qualifying measurements are, really in the metrics. The targets are thresholds and have trend analysis. And of course, the rating is how well the charter school is actually doing. Next slide, please. I'm going to get to the really good stuff. So we kind of break it down into three main sections. We really look at those short-term indicators, and I'm going to go over those with you in the next couple of slides. And then we look at some that are what we call sustainability indicators. And then finally, we look at those overall fiscal controls that we've been talking about all morning long. So to start this discussion, I want to talk first about what I think are the short-term indicators, the things that are, in my mind first. These are the things that can turn a charter school upside down, or any agency upside down, in a really quick hurry. So what can go wrong? We run out of cash. If we run out of cash, we run out of business. So days of cash on hand is an important indicator. FCMAT has always said that cash is king and queen. And so we want to make sure that we have sufficient cash in order to pay the payrolls, pay the bills, and so on and so forth. So there are some indicators in the tool that help you with that analysis. Does the school have enough cash to pay its bills? Really a critical indicator right there. The next one really is around enrollment. So if I had to go down the list, which you've seen earlier in other slides, it would be cash, and I'd say cash, 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 enrollment variances, average daily attendance, the UPP, which we've talked about, making sure that the LCAP is represented in the budget, and of course, what are the reserve levels? So these 6 here should be top of mind when we're looking at those financial statements, when we're looking at the budget assumptions and so on and so forth. And we will have a little chance to go through some of that with Jen a little bit later on in this presentation. The second major set of indicators really is around how is the charter school going to be sustainable over time? So we're first looking at those short-term indicators, those things that could go wrong in a quick hurry. Now we're looking at things that would cause us to think, hey, are they stable over time? Not just this year, but in a multi-year kind of position. So we're looking at those multi-year projections. Is the school living with its means? When we look at that second year and that third year, are they start to deficit spending? Have they made some plans to slow down some of that spending and make those corrections to be sustainable in the long term? What about those cash flows? They might have a lot of one-time money right now, and a lot of our agencies do, whether you're a county office or a charter school or a school district, we have a lot of one-time money in play. Some of that one-time money is going to, well, all of the one-time money is going to go away, but over these various years, some of the one-time money is going to go away this year. Some of it is going to go away next year. We also know we have some new grants in play. Arts and music, for example, 4-year one-time monies. Some of the emergency block grant money, which is coming in, 6-year money, but it's still one-time money. Are those properly represented in the cash flows? Those are some of the things I would look at, certainly, because what we see sometimes is that folks forget to take out the one-time revenues in those outside years, and that can be problematic. And so those are some of the things that we would look at to ensure that the charter school is going to be sustainable in the long term. The third one on this list is really around debt management and debt default. And so if they've taken out loans, whether they're state loans or private loans, are they meeting their obligations? Have they put those also into their cash flow projections? So sometimes we've looked at cash flow projections and we have noticed that they have forgot to put in the multi-year, again, those ongoing debt. And when do those run out? All those kinds of things are indicators for us to say whether or not that agency is going to be sustainable in the long term. The next slide goes over those other indicators. Other indicators, and we've touched on this throughout this discussion today, is those reviews around the financials at those various points in time throughout the fiscal year, and whether those reviews and comments from a county office and the agency of oversight are going to the board of the charter school. What about that audit? And we've also had some discussions about audit and audit performance and the timeliness of the audit. Do they have a clean opinion? Do they have some, is it a qualified audit? Are there some audit findings in there that are serious audit findings? Those are all those other kinds of indicators that we would look at when we're reviewing the financials of the charter school. Next, I'm going to go over some of our CCAP annual report toolkits. This is really exciting because we have put together with teams of people throughout the state. Authorizers have helped us all put together what we call an annual toolkit. And in addition to our financial toolkits on our website, which you can download, you can also download an annual report toolkit. This is really something that will help you as you build towards that renewal period. And so we encourage you to use the links on this page to dive into that annual report toolkit and provide some feedback to your charter school about how well they're doing in these various areas of academic performance, financial health, and operations and governance. Next slide, please. The highlights of the annual report, of course, include the purpose of the whole thing, initiating the conversations between the agencies, building that relationship, if you will, and sharing with them how well they're doing or not, and where they can make a difference, where they can make improvements, so that when we come up on those renewal periods, then they're going to have an opportunity to improve. Otherwise, how will they know how they're doing? We want them to be successful, then we need to help them. And this is a tool that certainly can do that and point out those areas of strengths and weaknesses, areas of improvement from our point of view as an oversight agency. So next slide, please. I'm trying to rush us along so we can get to the good stuff, Jen. So some considerations when we're looking at, all of that communication, which is really building that relationship between the authorizer and the charter school. We're really laying down that foundation for all future decisions, and being really transparent is such an important piece, and focusing on student equity. And as we come out of this pandemic, how can we help our charters be more successful as we are trying to be successful with fiscal compliance, with governance, with those areas that we're still unsure of as we move forward. We don't know what the fall is going to look like. So we all have to kind of stick together and share information and be partners as we move forward. So we want to maintain that professional relationship and continue building that important relationship between those agencies for kids to be successful. And we don't talk about that enough. We don't really bring children into the conversation, but ultimately that's what this is all about. Next slide, please. So Michelle is going to talk with you a little bit about the petition evaluation matrix and FCMAT's great checklist.
Well, so Yes, so we do have a petition checklist, but so does CCAP. So what you see on this slide is that you can see that we both have websites or links that you can go to. The link that FCMAT has was actually originally a CARSNet document that we updated in February. So you can go to that, that if a new petition came to you, that you'd be able to evaluate it against the checklist that we have. And then CCAP also has a petition toolkit that you could evaluate a petition against. So you have both of those links on this page. So go ahead and check out those links if you have a spare minute, haha. Or if you get a new petition, then you could go ahead and use those tools rather than reinventing a tool yourself or going through a petition without having anything to use. I think that's the best thing in education is you don't have to reinvent something yourself. So go ahead and give those a look.
Love it. Lots of tools. And so next slide, please. I want to talk with you a little bit about something brand new. We have a couple of new resources for you. Again, another link for some tools, some information, a couple of new MOUs, thanks to our California authorizers that, you know, continue to send us great information. Of course, you know, you can take a look at this as a sample MOU, but, you know, we always recommend that you curtail it to your own needs with your own charter, and that you have your legal counsel review it. But this gives you some ideas of some of the things that we think are important for you to make sure that are in your MOU, along with all of the great advice that Michelle and Jen have given you today for items that should be included in your MOU. Next slide, please.
Okay, so here's the fun part. Let me get the new slide. So we tried to find some sample charter. This one happens to be the adopted budget. So as an authorizer, right, you receive kind of 7 to 10 pages to oversee, right, to review, to see what their fiscal health is, right? If you're only using these forms, this is why we're encouraging you to ask for more, right? So if we just look at the budget for kind of reasonability, right? That's really all we have is our expertise based on our kind of background. And so that's kind of what I'm going to walk you through here. What are some of the obvious areas that might trigger questions? It does not mean that there's a problem with their budget. It's just, let's trigger questions. Let's trigger that communication. And I'm going to apologize because my face is going to look this way because my sharing screen is over here. So I apologize. So first, I just want to kind of point out, right? This first column is their estimated actuals for prior year.
Jen, we don't have up on the screen. We need to have the documents. We have the PowerPoint still.
You do? Okay.
I think in the chat, we have a link. Maybe we can bring it up.
I don't see my stop sharing.
Okay, let me try.
Allison, where are you?
Yes. So you should, I can stop your sharing.
Yeah.
But you will have to restart your share.
I can't even see where I have the option. Sorry.
It's often at the bottom of your Zoom screen where you might see all of our faces. There should be a green button that says share screen.
Huh? It's gone.
It might be at the top of your screen.
I see my taskbar.
Okay, just put your mouse and go up from the taskbar, and then it should appear.
And it's gone. All right. There. All right. I found it.
Yay.
Right? Sorry. Like we
Okay.
had time for that. Again, so here's the adopted budget. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is an adopted budget on the alternative form, right? It's 7 pages. So obviously this is the document that we received from our charter as an authorizer. So again, just going through kind of 5 or maybe max of 5 points that just kind of jump out. So this first column is the estimated actuals. So this is where they think they're going to end the year. And so then you have the unrestricted and restricted for the current budget year. So I really did not pay attention to the unrestricted and restricted in this review. But if you look just from your prior year to your total over here, this only represents a 2.4% increase in just the LCFF funding, right? So we know that there was a super COLA out there, right? Over 6%. So here is where you need to figure out, did they use conservative numbers in their enrollment, their ADA, their UPP? Again, this just generates kind of an asterisk. Let's ask a question. Let's get their LCFF calculator so that you can get the details as to how this revenue was projected. Going again down to federal, we know that we're only for estimated, we're receiving what we're spending, right? So this should be what's in our expenditures. Well, then you go to the budget year, you want to make sure that this doesn't include carryover and there's a decrease. Well, we know there were a lot of one-time funds, so it might make sense, but again, they should give you detailed budget assumptions. Detailed budget assumptions should be going with this presentation or with this financial report to their board, along with like a presentation with kind of charts with all of this information. What makes up their LCFF, their enrollment, their ADA, their UPP? What makes up the federal revenues? Same with the state revenues, right? So we see that it was only 570 at the end of the year, prior year, or kind of the year you're in, right? But now it's going up to 732. Well, are they not spending the dollars? Do they not have a plan? So you don't want the charter to lose money. So let's kind of, again, just verify what these revenues are. I'm just going to say this. It's one of the things that I've found that I've experienced. So you have your local revenue and estimated this year, right? It's 341. You might want to look at their actuals to date, asking for some of their financial reports to see if that's actually on target. Yes, did you get your donor letters to saying that they are going to donate? But if it hasn't hit the 341 for current year and they've increased it for the next year, the likelihood is kind of overestimated. And remember, we're kind of hitting hard economic times. Well, it's not just hitting individuals, right? It's hitting businesses as well. So just again, just kind of red flags that just jump at you quickly when you look over one of these documents. I actually took a look at the salaries. So 1.2 million for certificated salaries up to 1.3. So almost an increase of 100,000, maybe one teacher, maybe two, but the LCFF dollars didn't show an increase in really an enrollment, right? Unless they used a really conservative AVA or UPP percentage. We had 6.5% COLA. So why are you increasing a teacher? Is it because you have the restricted dollars and they're kind of targeting that teacher for something specific? Is it in the LCAP? So again, just questions. This is interesting because your classified salaries are going up significantly. Well, we know even trying to find teachers is hard. It's the same thing with the classified staff. And so again, just triggering questions. I looked at the STRS percentage, easy calculation, right? You take this dollar amount divided by their certificated staff. The target or the STRS percentage for this year is 19.1. This does not equal 19.1. So is there a employee that's exempt, or there's a question, right? Because why aren't you using 19.1? It's 18.72 and it happens to be 18.72 in their multi-year. So did they just use the wrong percent, or is there somebody that's actually exempt? Again, just triggering communication between you as the authorizer and the charter that you're overseeing. again, trying to look at like the big pocket items. So 3,400, your health and welfare, right? They added a teacher and significant classified staff. Now, classified staff, if they're part-time, maybe in their petition or maybe in their agreements with their employees, they're not eligible for benefits, but it only increased by $13,000. I want to know where they're getting a plan for $13,000 for one full teacher. Is there a cap on the health and welfare? It could be, but none of this classified stuff is increasing your 3,400s. That just seems, again, generate a question. Not necessarily wrong, but let's generate those questions. So kind of going to scroll to the 5,000s. The 4,000s, kind of the same thing, right? You increase it with CPI, just things you want to check. They might have bought a bunch of equipment. They're not planning on buying it now. It's supposed to match their LCAP, so you could compare it to make sure. The one thing that stuck out for me is the insurance, right? The 5,400. We all know that the insurance for our liability insurance has increased significantly, right? We all have our property taxes coming through. They've increased. The fires, everything's increased. So the percentage of increase here on the 5,400 is 14.7%. So we'll talk about this a little later, but that's something to just remember and note. What was that? And building their budget, they probably already received this information from their insurance carrier. So it might make sense, right? The 5,500s typically increase by CPI. So it's just something to look at. Now, their professional consulting services and operating expenditures, significant increase, right? We saw the increase in state revenue. So it could be that they have some of those categorical dollars. But again, one-time dollars or ongoing dollars. You want to know what these expenditures are and ask the question. Sorry, I'm going through this kind of quick and I'm not watching the question, the chat box. I lost that. So if anybody else wants to kind of pick up on that. The reason I bring up those items, right? If you look at their kind of net position for their revenues over expenditures, well, it looks like they're going to end the year again budgeted, right? So this is continually changing with $20,000. But if the LCFF or the teacher or the health and welfare or the PERS, any of that could impact this what's my word for it? Like excess. But this could easily turn to where they're deficit spending. Now, do they have some reserves? They do have a reserve in this one's example of $500,000. But if that 20,000 turns to, 100,000 deficit plan or deficit spending, then how long can that $500,000 carry them? So I'm going to scroll down.
Jen, I'm thinking that one of the things we want to point out is that this prompts our original fiscal review. That, what Jen is saying is that leads to some deeper dive questions about those budget assumptions. Some of the things we've been talking about. What is driving this budget is the budget assumptions. And those are based on ADA, those are based on enrollment, those are based on COLA, those are based on health insurance increases and all of those things, CPI and some of the expenditures, and separating those one-time monies from ongoing monies and so on and so forth. But this is like the first document that we would look at, that we would, and do our initial review on the finances. And
Right.
These are the things that would just, from a reasonableness standpoint, stand out to us, and then prompt those additional questions for that deeper dive. Is that correct, Jen?
Yeah, no, exactly. And thank you, because I'm trying to kind of go through it quick. So I probably skipped over that. So thank you for jumping in, Debbie.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and again, I just did this on paper, right? You want to maybe put this in Excel spreadsheet. And so you can come up with those percentages and you can do some easy calculations in Excel. And you can do all the fiscal years, you know, your estimated actual, your budget, your first and second interim, and your unaudited actual, so that you can start seeing trends.
And
For
then,
the-
and Jen, sorry, there's one question that I was just going to answer. Do new charters have to switch to the new SACS reporting or SACS online, or can they continue to use the alt form? SACS charters have to switch to the new SACS reporting or the SACS online reporting for the unaudited. That's the one that they have to switch to for the unaudited this year. That's the answer to this question.
Right.
Just to let everybody know, that's the
So-
answer.
So again, kind of outlined in your MOU, right? What format that you are expecting their budgets to be submitted to you. You can identify a form. There's several counties out there that have specific forms that their charters as authorizers have to use. LAUSD has a very specific process that their charters have to use. And so in the MOU that can be identified, but this is using the alternative form. This now is down looking at the multi-year projection. So we lose the prior year on this form. So we talked about how this 2.2, right, was only an increase of 2.4%, even though we had that huge super COLA from their estimated actual of prior year. But when you go to year 2, it's way over the 5.3% in COLA. So it's 17.4. What happened? Are they adding a grade? Are they adding, did they really market? And so they're expecting to hit marketing. And so year 2 is gonna, bring in 100 more kids. Again, this ties to the LCFF. And then if you look at the third out year, it's just kind of a minor increase, like 4%, which is actually tied to the COLA. So something is going on here. They obviously know what they're doing, right? When you're seeing percentages like this change, they know that there's something going on. And so you need to ask for more information or detailed budget assumptions about this.
So before you leave that section, Jen, I just want to add that, while they have sufficient ending fund balance, this could be considered padding a little bit if the answers to your questions don't seem reasonable. For example, these exceed COLA in the outside years, and we can clearly see that from her example. So then the second question is, well, then why? Is it reasonable to assume, based on their trend, based on the history, that they would be adding another 100 kids when they haven't added kids in the prior years? What's driving that? Because that's increasing the bottom line, and it may be an artificial view. So those are the questions that we're taking a look at when she's pointing out that these percentages exceed COLA. There has to be a driver behind that. And if that's not reasonable, then it's increasing the fund balance tremendously in this case. And so when you look at the revenues over expenses, and they only have about 20,000 here to show in a positive way, then you have to then wonder, how are they going to be sustainable in those outside years if this doesn't materialize in quite the way that is being represented?
And you want to go back and look at their petition, right? If they are adding students or adding a grade, that needs to be outlined in their petition, because they can't do anything that hasn't already been approved in their petition, right? So again, it's just generating communication, and you want to make sure to know the answers to these things. The federal and state, really the only thing that I want to kind of focus on there is the one-time dollars. You want to make sure that the revenues are, again, they should be able to tell you what makes all of this 161,000. You want to make sure the one-time dollars are removed, and that they're not just carrying forward. It looks like it's decreasing, but then third year it goes back up. Does it align with the new state's budget, the governor's one-time funds, all the various programs? Is it consistent? And again, I mentioned the local revenue. So they increased it to 390, and then even in the 2 out years, right? They're expecting more local donations. Well, are they increasing the local donations because they don't want a deficit spend? Or do they have letters to support those numbers? So again, just generating communication between everybody. Same thing with the salaries and benefits again. We had the 100,000 added for the current year. We have another kind of 100,000 added in the second year, and then only 50 in the third year. But we saw the huge increase in their LCFF. So the other question to ask here is, what's your student to teacher ratio, right? Because you can really get in trouble if you're loading one teacher with 500 kids. Somebody has to meet with those students to sign off on all of their work, oversee what they're doing. And so what's the student to teacher ratio? We just recently had a charter that kind of got in trouble for that. And so you need to be able to ask those questions because they need to be realistic. Again, looking at this, the classified seems to be growing. Looking at your STRS percentage, I don't know why this charter does not want to use their 19.10 as in the school services dartboard. I even looked at earlier versions thinking maybe I missed something. But it's been 19.1, and yet this charter continually uses 18.72. Again, they may know. There may be somebody that's exempt from it. So not wrong, but a question. The health and welfare seems to be going up, but is it consistent with the salaries, right? We saw the 13,000 only from 1 year, but you've now added 200,000. And then by here, 250. I mean, health and welfare themselves go up anywhere from 3 to 5%, and that's on a good year. So just things, again, to generate questions. I do want to point out this one. I don't know why it stuck with me, but this insurance. So we know that from prior year to this current year budget, it was 14.7%, right? To get to the 49. Seems to be consistent. Everybody's picking up a little more due to the fires that hit California. The second year actually used the 14% increase, but somehow the third year only grew, I want to say it was 6%. So why only 6% in that third out year? Is that really a good, true, consistent number? If we're seeing higher than that. Again, 5,800s, they don't seem to be kind of climbing, even though some of the revenue did increase. The 4,000s didn't increase huge. So where did that, 14% of revenue in the LCFF, where is it going? Where is it in the LCAP? And is it in these budget years? So again, they're not deficit spending in any of the 3 years, but if they have to make some little tweaks, right? All it takes is one health and welfare package possibly to wipe out that third out year, or a couple of the ADA or enrollments to be reduced in that second year. If that second year LCFF is wrong, if their calculator was completed wrong, then they are deficit spending in that second year, right? Again, with their ending fund balance, they're still sitting at 500,000, but that's not a lot of room for some errors. So you just really want to look at those triggers.
It's not a lot of room if their enrollment in ADA is off. If it's overstated, that pretty much wipes it out.
Correct.
So that's where the danger is. So, the strong focus should be on the biggest revenue sources, LCFF. So spending a lot of time, really looking at the factors that drive the LCFF would be important for you. And then, of course, in the salaries and benefits section, which is the majority of the expenditures, and a lot for the charter schools would be in the 5,800 section. And those are where you would spend most of your time in analysis and asking for support information that would support those pieces. Thank you, Jen. You did a wonderful job on that.
I have another one. This one is an interim. I believe I'm sharing it now, so I hope you can see it.
Yeah.
So again, the alternative form, because that's what they're required to use. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So again, looking at the LCFF, so this is second interim, right? So by second interim, your seabeds, your CalPADS numbers have been reported. You know your UPP count, your percentage. Your LCFF really should be able to be calculated pretty accurately. And so it seems to have gone down from first interim just down to second interim, right? So that's good to see that they've updated it. But again, you can ask for those enrollment reports and you can ask for those CalPAD reports just to confirm that the numbers they're using are accurate. The local revenue, okay, so this is just kind of a minor, but in some of our indicators of risk, budget monitoring is one of them. And this just jumped out at me again. It's what I do. Their local, their actuals to date show that they've received 6,700. It's minor, I get it, but their second interim is still only reflecting 1,000. So if they're not even increasing their budget to reflect actuals to date for revenues, then how much budget monitoring are they doing with everything else, right? I mean, you want all your revenue to be accounted for. So again, looking at your actuals to date, when you get down to your expenditures, you really want to make sure that it's second interim. So you've spent probably 60%, just a little under 60%, depending on how they're paid, 12thly, 10thly, 11thly, whatever. You'll know that about your charter. So you want to make sure that the salaries that have been paid to date, that the remaining amount, like the remaining months, do the calculation, right? Divide it by 6 or 7, and then multiply it out by the remaining months to see if that adds up to the 2.1, or is it under budgeted or over budgeted? So you want to do that for all of your salaries, certificated and classified. Again, they're really quick calculations, very easily done in an Excel spreadsheet. Again, things that stuck out to me. So we're here second interim, right? Your actuals to date through January 31st. So their budget at first interim was 305. They took the time to reduce it to 238,000. But to date, about more than halfway through the year, you've only spent 44. I mean, at minimum, this could be reduced to probably 100,000. So are the people being like coded incorrectly? Are they really being coded to a 22, 23, 24? But something's wrong here. So again, just looking at your actuals, you can't just look at the budget. You really need to use this actuals to date to see what's happening in the charter. The last thing you want is a large pot of money to fall to the bottom, or they're not spending the restricted funds, and then they're going to lose them, right? They all have end dates and they're coming up soon. So let's help the charter. If they're unable to find employees, if they're unable to fill those positions, then let's come up with another plan to help them utilize those dollars. Again, I just went down to the, where am I at? 34s, 3,400. Oops, sorry. So I did just a quick calculation. Check the percentages that are remaining. Again, if you use that 328 and divide it out by the 7 months and then multiply it times the remaining, is the number sufficient? For my note, they might be underestimating for their 3,400s. So again, they're not using position control, or they just don't have a good way to calculate all of that. Going down to their net increase decrease for fund balance. First interim, they were deficit spending only 2,000, and now they have a positive for second interim. But again, based on some of those numbers, that may not actually be the case. So just again, generating questions. This charter school actually is required to fill out another form, which is really nice because it gives you the differences. So it shows you from first interim to second interim what the change is between the two. Not all charter schools are required to fill out this form. So again, stealing from other people's ideas, you might want to implement something like this. But I'm going to skip ahead. Sorry, close your eyes, scrolling fast. Going to the
point out to everybody that you know, if you need to leave, there are some links to these documents, and you'll be able to really kind of dig into them yourself if you'd like to. But if you do need to leave, please fill out the survey before you go, and we'll keep track of our presentation as we go forward here. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just going to jump ahead. It's really the same things on checking the reasonability between year one, year two. What's that? Oh, sorry, I thought somebody was talking. But to scroll down for this charter school, current year, they're not deficit spending, but look at year 2 and year 3. It's $1.5 million in both out years. That's significant. So are they talking about it? Do they have a plan to address it? That's really the question that you want to ask here. And just quick, I don't know if anybody wants to stay 2 seconds, but a cash flow sample. This one's just really easy. You can see here that the cash flow, I don't know what they were thinking. They added, it says LCFF and federal revenue. No, break those out. They don't come in the same, and you want to know how your dollars are coming in. The biggest thing that you want to see here, and that you don't know, I actually know because I know who worked with this charter, but they put their balance sheet information into their cash flow, right? So they have their receivables and their liabilities, their payables are in here as well. And so not correct, right? You want your actual receipts and your actual expenditures, and then you have your balance sheet kind of on the bottom. So they're missing their in lieu, they're missing their actual federal. This federal actually wasn't federal, it was their EPA. So they actually have no accounting for their federal revenue on this screen or on this cash flow. And then the expenditures really didn't align with their budget that was submitted. So just going through it quick, this is just kind of a bad example.
So Jen, if I could just jump in on this, what you said was really important, and I want to stress that a little bit. The total column is the first column I would look at and make sure that that agreed with the budget document. Because
Correct.
at the end of the day, the cash flow, all of those months total up, and that total, every single interim, every single reporting period, it changes. And so then the cash flow needs to change accordingly. So the total column must agree with the latest budget information. And so those two always work in tandem. And we need to make sure that we check that first and then start moving backwards so that we see all the categories represented. And what Jen said is absolutely correct. You know, we have to have a breakout of all of those revenue sources because they all come in at different times. Cash is different from budget. And so we know that there's a cash flow schedule for LCFF. It's 55999. We know that on federal revenues, a lot of them come in on a quarterly basis. And we know that lottery comes at different times and so on and so forth. And that's why they have to be represented separately on separate lines. And it's really important that we share maybe a template with the charter schools to use that would be better than this one, because this one is not fully represented.
Well, and to put a plug in for Projection Pro, it has a cash flow projection that really is amazing and does a really good job. So I'm gonna bounce back to what I think is gonna be the presentation. Sorry.
So we're ready for just the final slides here, I guess. We can go to the
Yes.
Final
next.
slides.
All right. And I think, oh, wait, I guess we have one more here. Perfect, Matt.
Oh, yes. So another great tool if you wanted to use it on an annual basis as far as ensuring different requirements for oversight. And you can see the link here. We do update it on a regular basis to make sure that the different requirements that your charter school should be complying with. We really want you also to use it as a communication tool with your charter schools and work together to make sure that you are communicating the different requirements back and forth.
Oops.
You're in charge, Jen.
I know. Still trying to.
And then another tool we have available is the Charter School Accounting Manual. A lot of great policies, procedures, information, best practices in the manual that a lot of charter schools don't have an accounting manual. And so we developed this as a tool for just that, so that charter schools could have a tool to have an accounting manual that they could start with and adopt as their own. Is this what mine too? Oh, and more resources. These are different web pages, CASSI's, FCMAT's, and CCAP's, where you can have a lot of great information.
Oh. So thank you. Michelle?
Yes, I am here. I just want to thank you. Will you move to the next slide? We are so appreciative that CASSI has charter chats coming up. If you have not joined the CASSI listserv, our next annual visit, our next document, it's going too fast. Our next CASSI event will be our charter chat, but we also have these two, this training happening again in person, one in Monterey on the 19th and the other one in El Dorado on the 21st. The difference with these is please, they're in person. So you're going to have lots of time to work with these three amazing women who have shared so much this morning and dig into your own financials. We have the charter chats. We also have on November 14th, a presentation happening at CSDC. And on December 1st, we'll also be doing a presentation at the CSBA conference. And in January, we'll be doing our regional trainings again. So next slide. Once again, here's the contact information for our partner COEs. If you need to reach out to any of them or reach out to us, where our contact information, I believe, is on the next slide. And last slide for SCCOE information. Thank you so much for being here. If you have not filled out the survey, please fill out the survey. We are so grateful. And thank you so much for spending a few extra moments with us today. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.